Before we start, as always, I would like to thank you on the support for the last video. It means a lot. I enjoy talking about these things, and this encourages me to keep going, so I thank you for that. Now, I want to be clear, in this video, I'm not going to be systematically going against every piece of evidence provided by theists for the evidence of the divine, because that would take a while, and also, I don't think it'd be very productive. Instead, I'm going to be providing the reasons why I think that on a fundamental level, evidence of the divine cannot exist. I hope you stick with this. Leave any comments below. As always, I do read those, and they do help me think about my future videos. And as always, thank you for watching. To begin, I would like to examine the current state of evidence provided by the divine, as we see in theist beliefs. And I don't mean specific events, I mean overall the quality of evidence, which I currently believe to be vague or lackluster. And I say that because it can't convince the majority of people that aren't already within the faith. It only strengthens those who already have faith in a religion. See, some might not see this as a problem. They would say, what are you expecting? You can't have everything given for you. And that's okay, but I want to say that any amount of evidence, just to start out, any amount of evidence of the divine goes against the idea of a faith-based religion, does it not? I mean, you'll often hear the argument, you just have to have faith. You cannot argue faith. Especially for if you're questioning God's actions, you have to have faith that he has a plan for you. And they keep this ideology, the theists, up until the point in which they have a piece of evidence that supports their side. This can be seen in many situations with the faking of Noah's Ark and the whole burial thing. I won't go into it. Please look into it if you don't believe me. But that's just one example. Or like the Shroud of Turin. These are all proven to be false, but just because they seem to support a narrative for theists, they immediately leap to it despite their entire belief system being based off of not needing evidence. It just seems hypocritical to me. And I understand that some people could look at that and say, sure, that could be the case, but there are still other ways to look at it. Like if I based my faith off of those pieces of evidence being involved intrinsically. I need this evidence to have faith in a religion. And that's fine, but then I'd like to bring up the fact that this all-knowing, benevolent creator who loves us all unconditionally would create pieces of evidence knowing that many of his creations would not follow it. See, in my mind, if I were to create a world and love all of the creations on it, which would be humans in this case, I would do everything I can to bring them to the light, proverbially. I would give them the most amount of chances possible to come to me in the afterlife to enjoy eternal bliss or whatever I promise. I would not create people knowing that they would never turn to this light that I promised them. And yet this is what theists will have you believe God does. He creates people and he leaves, at best, lackluster evidence. This almost begs the question of, if there is a real God, would it not be cruel to not ensure that all of your creations end up in your afterlife? And crueler still to create pieces of evidence that only apply to those who already at least partially have faith in you, to forever taunt those who will be damned to eternity of torture. If we don't believe that, then we have to believe he is not all-powerful, as he will leave these mediocre pieces of evidence that can at best only taunt a large population of people that he has created for his afterlife. In the ideal world. It also begs the question of, if God is only going to allow this lackluster evidence of supporting him to exist, why would he allow so much more evidence against him to exist? All the other narratives about how life evolved that are more convincing to many people than his story. God providing this lackluster evidence, or no evidence at all, and then allowing this evidence which supports other narratives about how life evolved, therefore leading people farther away from his religion and a happy afterlife, doesn't that speak more on his lack of power? It speaks to me more as this evidence was fabricated by human beings and is therefore flawed, and we can see that, the majority of us can. Darwinian theory of evolution. There is boatloads of evidence to support that, indisputably. No one in their right mind, after looking at the evidence to support this theory, should think that it is wrong. However, you'll never find that for God's religion. And this ties more on, if God were to leave evidence, you'd think he would make it infallible. If he's all-powerful, he can do that. Which means the evidence currently left behind, eyewitness testimony, falsifiable materials, likely left by human beings in an attempt to prove of God's existence. A very useful hypothetical I've brought up in previous videos and I'm going to bring up now is, you can try to imagine a world in which a benevolent God with unconditional love for his creations built from the ground up. Does that look like the world we live in today? Or is it more likely, with the hardships and suffering that many people face on the daily, this world is a product of natural evolution? I mean, this hypothetical on its own is enough for me, at least it was enough for me when I first heard it, to just weigh the possibilities. I bring up the God of the gaps a lot as well. It is the God that is erected whenever thought reaches an area that science has yet to tread. And it's always been so confusing to me to see people reach those areas where science has not yet reached and go, this must be something divine, instead of, we just haven't found this yet. Because historically, we will find answers to our questions. We've had questions about the weather, we've had questions about the evolution of animals, and also historically, we've created gods for these. But once science reached those areas, we were able to explain them in a way that made these gods seem ridiculous. So why now, when asking about the theory of life, about the afterlife, do we jump to God just because we've beat science to the punch? One more thing that I see people say a lot is that we need this diversity in the world to really earn our spot in the afterlife. If we can fight each other and join this religion, we have earned our spot in this eternal bliss. But my question to that is, why did God have to make it that way? Why did he have to make this part of our lives, not the afterlife, all this fighting and tension and hardship? Many people will say that if he didn't, we wouldn't be able to appreciate the bliss of the afterlife, that we might become complacent or bored if his creations only experience joy all the time. But I would like to argue that while in our current state, the way that God made us perceive things, it would be boring to experience bliss, and he could change that if he designed us differently. To experience only bliss for our entire lives, is that not the same thing of the afterlife? I mean, at a certain point, it gets to be purgatory to only experience bliss for eternity, right? That's all the afterlife is. So why would it be worse to experience just 80 years more of bliss on top of that eternity right now? I got a little bit off topic there, but it all binds back together with the question of, why would a good and benevolent God do this? Why would he leave mediocre evidence? Would he leave any evidence at all? I say that with the current idea of God that most of us share today, no. Evidence of the divine cannot exist. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you leave comments of questions below. I always do read them, and I appreciate them. Thank you.